Thank you for learning Siebel with the Siebel Hub. We have a unique, comprehensive and always up-to-date collection of Siebel CRM 2021 training classes. We can deliver live online and on-site training in the highest quality with the most experienced instructors. And we also offer a unique modular Siebel CRM 20 and 21 training. Follow the links in the description or on this slide to learn more and learn Siebel with the Siebel Hub.
Hello friends, hello everybody who is already in the room, and I hope people will join in over the next few minutes. It's the third Siebel Friday and we are in the middle of 21 and we have 21.3 out, so that's definitely worth a look. So I put together some highlights there. We got Nick today, Nick from Duke. So Nick is here and he's going to present his take on running Siebel in production on a hybrid environment with Linux and Windows. So that's going to be a report from the field. So looking forward to that. Yeah, thanks Duncan for joining, representing Duncan and maybe Oracle a little bit. So you might
probably more myself, to be fair.
Yeah, okay. But if, as usual, I think if there are any questions that you have, put them in the chat as usual. But on the Siebel side, there was something happening as well. So we got a 21.3 update right on the spot on March 17th. And of course, I went and looked into the release notes and the new bookshelf. And I dug out the information that is hidden away in some what's new notes and known issues, and put together slides. Just a reminder, there's already a recording. I won't go into too much detail because I want to give Nick enough time to do his thing, and Juris also has something to tell us. So I want to go into great detail like I do in the YouTube recording. So I'm sure you're subscribed already, and yeah, let's see if we can break the 1,000 subscribers. There is the 21.3 update is there, so it has all the slides I'm showing here, so I'm not repeating myself, so maybe you want to take a look. It's like an 18-minute. Just want to highlight the highlights really. So the one thing that is documented as a feature, as a new feature, is the support for 64-bit Java for IMAP POP3 drivers. So if you have email response or any, also that includes, I think, correct me guys, I'm not an expert in this field, but it's also outbound email. So any communication with a mail server is now through the Tomcat on the SES. So that's like finishing move, I would say, because JMS, for example, does that already. Java Business Service runs on that Tomcat. So that Tomcat gets really busy. If you update to 21.3, you have to move because the old way of using a 32-bit and JVM is no longer supported. So that administrators have to migrate, really. It's not done automatically, as I understand. And it's fully documented. So that's like the biggest feature there is. Then there are some tiny changes which are documented all along the place. One is for all the customers who run Siebel in multiple languages. I asked one of my German customers, do you feel bothered by the speed of delivering a workspace? They say, no, it's fine. But what happens when you have multiple languages? Every object is duplicated, of course. So there's the same applet is for ENU and German and French. So it delivers them sequentially until 21.2, and 21.3 starts delivering in parallel, which, is bound to be faster And there's a new system preference. You can turn it off if you don't want it. So that retro switch is built in as well. We had a discussion on the Siebel Hub there. This is not really brand new, but it's like the second time it's mentioned on the release notes. And as an OpenUI developer, I have, well, spent long hours to, for example, find the frigging label for a frigging control. If you've ever been there, you know what I'm talking about.
Well, I think if I'm not wrong, this is not really the right way to look for things. In theory, and as I say, it's only a theory, in theory, you should be able to look through an array to tell you which input fields are mapped to a particular field. It requires a few levels of indirection in order to get to the field, the input.
Duncan, you're completely right. Getting the input control, there's a function, get_el. That's absolutely fine. You get the control, but when you want to modify the very label associated to that control on a form applet, you are in the past, before that fix, the label ID was not always the aria labeled by in the control. It was different. Sometimes it was the same, then sometimes it was not. Now with 2111, I think Olex from ideaport pointed that out. 20.11 seemed to have fixed it finally, and now in 21.3 there is final confirmation in the release notes that this is now happening, including the accessibility for the labels for screen readers is now no longer broken because the labels include the applet ID, the number like 2 on the screenshot.
Yeah, that's what was broken, right?
Yeah, that was broken, but when Oracle fixed it, they broke the aria labeled by for a few releases. And it was broken before, so I'm not blaming anyone. It was like just a generation of OpenUI developers has found a workaround. But now it's like, okay, just one lookup, get that attribute and find the diff with a span with that ID, and you have the label for 100%. Before we started, discussed with Nick that 21.3 kind of stealthily introduced a new way of upgrading the repository. I call it stealthily because there's only one hint in the installation guide. It says post-install DB setup no longer runs repository upgrade. So I had plenty of discussions really whether repository upgrade is it really required. If you look into the log files of the post-install DB setup, then you see it's actually executed. It runs. But as Nick pointed out, there never is like the promised integration workspace with all the stuff that you can then inspect and whatever. So now in 21.3, this seems to have changed for real. So the post-install database setup, then you run it manually, and then you find yourself with an integration workspace. I just have had it open here. So that's the integration workspace that's created with a, on my version, I was on 20.11 when I ran it. It went into like retro mode and said, ooh, I haven't done anything for a long time. And it imported 140 new objects and updated 124 objects. All nice and safe in an integration workspace, so you can inspect it, run an object manager on it. I find that interesting. How about you?
I find it to be a bug.
Duncan?
Yeah, I find it to be a bug. It's just a logic bug. And without going into too much detail, if you were upgrading, then you would get this clinical trial fix. But if you are updating, you won't in this version because it was left out of the post-install DB setup logic, and it was in for the upgrade logic. So it's one of those bizarre times where if you happen to be coming from IP14,
Yeah,
you would
get
have got
everything.
you would have got this stuff, no problem. And if you're coming from 21.2, you would not get this stuff, and it should be fixed in either 21.4 or 21.5.
Yeah, okay. I won't argue it's too early to tell what Oracle will make of this, but honestly, this is what most of us expected to get that integration workspace either automatically.
Yes, and that is what you should get. Yeah. But the logic was missed out of it's just the logic was missed out. It's a failing of QA.
Okay, don't say too much. It's on the record.
These things happen, right? And where they do happen, further automation can be added to make sure it doesn't happen again.
Yeah, sure. So it's an interesting change. One of these hidden gems that some of us might have been waited for a long time is in the service API of the inbound REST. It was a little bit troublesome to explain to people why you now had to have a body element in wrapping the input property set, right? And now there's a parameter legacy. You add it to the query string and set it to Y. And then the need for creating that body wrapper goes away. And also the response is now more what you expect from a Siebel message. If you work with a business service like the Siebel account or whatever that returns an integration object instance. SSO, the database security adapter supports SSO since 20.10. And it was a little bit weird when you set it up because it let you like log in without a password because it like accepted SSO. And now there's a new security adapter mode that goes with it. I've not been able to test it, but that's a new mode, string DBSSO.
My name's Nick Clavijo. I work at Duke Clinical Research. We have a multi OS environment where we run Linux 7 and Windows 2016. And some of the things we have is the reasoning is a lot of things you can't do on a Linux box, like integrate with Word or other things like that. For us, we had found issues with the Java 64 MQ profile, and Oracle Support gave me a workaround, and I'll discuss that also a little bit. So one of the things we need to make sure for our Linux environment is that we have a good directory structure. I am not a Linux admin, never professed to be. So I have Linux folks do most of the heavy lifting, like getting the directory structure started, mainly the Siebel home directory created, because it has to be created by root, but owned by Siebel. They do the install the Java version. They make sure that the C shell is installed. And we run K shell mostly. So when I first started doing installs for the software, I found out that it just didn't like it. So I had them install C shell for install, but everything else I do K shells on. So that's one of the little gotchas on a Linux box. Then I also had them do the Oracle 32-bit client. I had them install that. Again, I'm not a Linux person, so installing stuff and putting it in the right place and getting the owners and all that stuff, not my forte. I don't want to be a Linux admin. I know just enough to run the Siebel application on it. Then the big one is make sure your firewall rules are set, and that takes a lot of effort. I'm not sure if the Windows folks has the same set of issues, but we got all the firewalls set up both on Linux and Windows. Windows, we actually had the infrastructure folks create a group policy for the window ports. All the default window ports and the new ones we needed for 20.6 is what we're running. Same things we had on Windows. The big ones is that you got to have the X windows there. So when you do installs, it kicks open the X windows so you can run it. Otherwise, you're doing everything from command line, and I'm not a command line person. I'm sorry. I got raised on Windows. I'm a GUI person, so I do command line very little. The other thing we did, make sure you had Chrome installed so you can bring up your application, because we do not support anything but Chrome on our site. And in the environments, we have the multiple servers. In our dev environment, we put everything on one server like most folks do. I came up with a naming convention that I use for all my servers. So like the 9011 to 9013 are all my AIs. If I'm doing an AI on any machine in any environment. For the Siebel Enterprise servers, it's 9301 to 9303. And that way, no matter what server I'm on or where I'm at, I know that I'm putting it on that server. We run 7 environments here, 3 training, 3 devs, 1 vanilla, 1 sandbox, 1 gold. We run a test environment that we use between sandbox and test to check migrations and stuff with the new releases. And we have a Val environment and a training environment and a production environment. And it's fun keeping them all in sync. So they all have to have something in common that makes it easy for me and my one developer. We're a 2-person shop. So, and gateways are 9311 to 9313, which makes it fun. So on the Windows server, we only have the ports for 9301 through 9303 because it's only the application server where we do documentation merging. In other words, we create, for our environment, we create trip reports or any type of Word merging type documentation because Word has to live on a Windows box. Also, we have a JMS receiver we had to create for our ActiveMQ integrations. For one of our processes. And one of the things we learned there is that the Java MQ profile parameters are definitely different. And the location of the jars, active MQ jars, are very important to note. So I'll show those also. Now, our Val environment is much more like a production environment. And so the Linux, we have 3 Linux servers. And you can see that on the server 1, we have the gateway and the AI. So they run there all the time. And then server 2 and 3, you see how you only use the 9301 ports for both those servers. And it works out that our Windows server works the same across all environments. It's always documentation server and the JMS MQ process. So one thing about having multiple Java profiles and why you need them is if you have 3 different programs that have 3 different sets of requirements for your jars that are distinctly collide with each other, you need to separate them into different Java MQ profiles. So like our Java MQ profile is for, like I said, our active MQ. So out of the box, the top one, this is the Java 64. This comes out of the box. You notice that it points to local host 9302. Depending on when you create your environment, that port may not always be the correct port. So make sure it's your Siebel server port. And as you notice, it's 9302, which is the Siebel server port, of course. And then on our special one, where we created a new Java container subsystem, we talk about the class path is gone for all practical purposes, except for this situation where it now points to wherever you point your new jar files. And you can notice it's a D directory, which means it's a Windows directory. And if you look down at a container URL, you'll notice that I actually specifically put the server name down so it knows to go to the Windows server and where in the Windows server to look for its process. We tried to use the local, and it just got lost. It could not work. I don't know if they've fixed that since 20.6, but we've had, this is how we got the workaround to work for us. Works like a champ, no problems, no issues. In the folder, we put the jars that are needed by ActiveMQ, which are the ActiveMQ all, the log, and whatever the other third jar is. My ActiveMQ guys just told me what to put there. That's what I did, and we got it to work. And how's it used? Okay, so first you have the Windows server, which we call DH for documentation host. And so how we named our algorithms. Then we have the component, and inside that component, it points to the Java subsystem Java 64MQ. And you'll notice also that our Windows server the install directory is a D drive, so you can tell. Our nomenclatures too are VW for virtual web, and this one is a training environment. And that's how that works.
Okay, wow, Nick, that was a great presentation. Especially, I love the how you laid out the custom Java 64 profile, because that is where a lot of people, I think, are struggling. Thanks much.
It's a tough one, that's for sure.
Are you there, Juris?
Yes.
There you are.
I am.
Okay.
Hi, hello, everyone.
Yeah, hi, Juris. Yeah, you got an announcement to make.
Yeah, I mean, as some of you know, we've been hosting 4-episode webinar series back in December, covering the topic of Kubernetes, basically cloud-native architecture, which is coming with Siebel. I hope, Duncan is not in the position to officially comment it, but many people are excited about it, but there is no clarity when it's going to come. But I'm really happy that it got into statement of direction for Siebel. So there is some mentions of that. Yeah, and I think kind of Alex is showing some of these webinar recordings that we had in December.
Yeah, I just
and now, yeah,
YouTube channel. Yeah, just in case.
Yeah, exactly. So it was like the first we had this overview webinar. Then we had the one dedicated to cloud native architecture, basically explaining what it is, how it runs, how Siebel will play in that, and like what's the next step you could do. Then we discussed something about the Kafka. So what kind of use cases could have in the Siebel environment for that, and again together with the cloud native architecture from Oracle, native Siebel and Kafka integration is coming as well, which is pretty exciting for those of us who are into Kafka and data streaming. Yeah, and then another webinar was about like Siebel UX transformation with our tools or with our methodologies. As Alex see, it had like the most views, but quite a lot of likes. But to tell you the truth, I think it was kind of some kind of hiccup in the beginning, and people were looking for some other product, and they were hitting this Nexus phase. And initially we got like 1,000 views within 3 hours, but then it kind of went slow. I will not tell you what kind of products the people found associated with Nexus phase. But anyway, now we're gonna start another webinar series. So Alex, I will send you the link it's in the chat. Everyone else can copy it as well. But basically the idea here will be about hedging your Siebel career. So it is more business analyst or developer oriented. And again, the big idea is that what kind of skills we can learn in parallel to doing our day-to-day Siebel projects. And if you kind of scroll down a little bit, basically there will be 3 webinars related to the, first we'll start with user experience, which will, kick off on next Tuesday. So there we will start about, actually the last one, the user experience.
Sorry.
Yeah. because we have to set up people for the two first still. But basically, on the user experience, it's maybe more oriented toward business analysts, so that they can learn some about user-centric design, like how they do user research, which is important part of getting the user experience right. How they can leverage some kind of design systems in order to design great UI. And because again, if your organization have design system in place, you don't need to be like really visual, artistic person to come up with something great. And then basically there will be sort of some steps how to get to kind of the first UX project within your organization, like how you can either gradually adopt it or adopt it like in, I don't know if there is such an English word, but like partisan way, or do you have such a word in English, partisan? It's like guerrilla way? It's like a kind of unofficial, like without telling what you do.
Okay, anarchic. Or
not anarchic, but anyway, so it's kind of undercover stuff. So you do, but you don't tell everyone. So like how you can mix some of these practices within your existing job, and then advance it will be sort of UX that you are doing. And then for that, the speakers will be myself, Alex Mesayedov, and Natalia, who were presenting also on the webinars before. So we all used to be, Siebel business analysts in the past. Some of us still are, but now kind of more and more do this UX stuff. So we'll kind of share also our experience. Then there will be a session for the web developers. So it is either going to be one of our web developers who is still doing Siebel, so like open UI beyond jQuery. Maybe Oleg will be joining as well. So Oleg, it's kind of first time you hear it, but that's it. But also we try to arrange some of the people who used to work at ideaport Riga, who used to work with Siebel. They started to do some, React, Vue.js stuff within OpenUI, and eventually, now they're kind of running their own career as a web developers. Like, how was their journey from that point of view? And of course, with web developers to start adopting web frameworks, Oleg's tool, which we developed here at ideaport Riga, this Nexus Bridge could be kind of a big help. And then the last session, it's about Kubernetes and Kafka. So basically, we'll have Evgeny Shatilo explaining the stuff he's doing at one of our customers, where we do this data streaming from Siebel using Kafka into Azure to kind of improve performance of the mobile applications. And Kafka and some integration components are running in Kubernetes, and basically he will tell like how he learned that stuff while doing Siebel projects, point to some resources, and I think he will also cover a little bit of Azure DevOps kind of stuff that he learned. So basically, again, the idea is that as kind of it stays here in bold, what are the market relevant skills we can learn and practice while still working on our day-to-day Siebel projects. So that's kind of the big idea. So that's why, start doing, I don't know, Oracle CX Clouds or Salesforce doesn't qualify here because it's kind of hard to combine with what you do with Siebel life. But I think these topics could be, or career tracks or skill sets to develop could be kind of relevant both for Siebel world and also outside of the Siebel world if something happens with us. Yeah, and again, the first webinar next Tuesday, so it's going to be about UX. As I told you, there is like a link to register, and then when we'll have the dates available for web development session and Kubernetes Kafka session, then we will post them, on the LinkedIn. I'm sure Alexander will give us a favor and share it on his Twitter posts. So
yeah, sure.
Stay tuned, guys. So we'll have like 3 sessions in the coming 3 months or 3 weeks or something like that.
Okay. Well, yeah,
maybe I'll ask Duncan, like again, private opinion or something like that. Do you know, Duncan, what kind of role Siebel developers will play in the products like DX4C or the digital experience for communication? is it like Siebel configuration part? Is it fully controlled by Oracle in these SaaS settings, or still like customer Siebel developers will be able to kind of extend it and stuff?
To be honest, I'm not 100% clear. I couldn't give a perfect answer to that. My expectation is that the product manipulation, product catalog manipulation capabilities of Siebel are being exposed via REST, via a user interface, which is more modern, shall we say, than Siebel. But I haven't personally played with it, so I'm not exactly aware. But you kind of have to think that, particularly with the kind of customers that will be interested in this, are probably at least a good percentage of them will probably already have Siebel.
Mm-hmm.
And so if they have knowledge or systems in place already that allow them to configure Siebel, then I envisage them transporting pre-existing product catalog definitions between an on-premise system and the DX4C. But yeah, it's not an official position, and I don't honestly know the answer. But yeah, that's my guess.
All right, but then later down the road, even for communication industry, it's not going to be just product catalog, right? So it's going to be more objects that you will be exposing, and also like if you look at this whole idea behind digital experience for industry, you have the financial services on the roadmap. What was there as well? Like I think for the manufacturing, or maybe not manufacturing, financial services and automotives. At least this is what the industry is on the map.
Yeah. So sorry, Juris, I was just I was bringing up the Oracle product page. So
that's
just
a good one.
to help you with the list. Yeah. So I think reading, I'm not sure if reading this correctly, but intelligent launch is like the product catalog, offer creation and all that. So here I'm speculating, is definitely not my area of expertise. But and then there's marketing pit, which, well, if you look at the screenshot here, is covered by Eloqua, not Siebel. Again, I'm just reading the website out loud, and then there's a buying experience. That's probably the catalog bit. That's
probably the catalog.
Yeah. Frictionless buying, and then there's proactive care, which then goes into service, as you said, no? Service.
It's kind of interesting what kind of system is going to support it. So.
Yeah, that's gonna be interesting. Not sure if there will be communication anytime soon. Where is which of these? Let's call the module. Which of these uses Siebel as a backend? And which it looks like Oracle will integrate more than just Siebel and Visual Builder to put this together. Eloqua is definitely there, and others.
But again, I kind of look at it maybe not from the product perspective and what the customers are going to get it, but more from a Siebel consultant or Siebel developer perspective.
Sure.
Like if I want to continue to work in the Siebel space as I do now, and I believe that with this vertical solutions, this digital experience for particular area, it's pretty cool way to solve some of the existing Siebel project problems, at least related to UX, because this Redwood UI, it's fantastic. It's kind of the best enterprise application I have seen myself. Well, let's put it better, say it like better than Salesforce for sure, and better than Velocity. But then, like me as a Siebel developer who've been like investing into Siebel technology for 10, 15 years, what is going to be my role in it? Can I sort of jump on this DX4C, DX for financial services, DX for, I don't know, clinical trials, DX for automotives, maybe also for airlines as well, so that Jason has some kind of role to play in the digital experience stuff. What I'm going to do with that? Yeah, DX for Jason, yes.
Are you still there, Jason? We're making fun of you, sorry.
Yes.
Okay. You're in the car now. Okay. So, yeah. Juris, thank you for this initiative, and yeah, that is a really good discussion and a really good question. Hedging your career, hedging your Siebel career, like what is the next move in this ever-changing landscape where Siebel is like, it could feel like a rock in the how do you say, a rock in the tides of time, but this rock could crumble very quickly when your company is like, okay, moving to some other vendor or to Oracle DX4X.
Yeah, DX4X, yes, it's a good name. DX4I is kind of confusing, yeah.
Time will tell, I think, and once the first DX4C projects come out, I'm sure we will try to keep an eye on them. And maybe there's a trial version, or I haven't seen any. I'm scanning my OCI account for anything to pop up to put a machine on or whatever, but it's yeah, so time will tell. But
yep.
Great thing, and yeah, please guys mark down the March 30th, definitely for the first webinar with Juris and friends. Definitely, I'm afraid this is not my date because I haven't got an appointment, but anyway, I'll watch the recording and then attend the
you need to teach kind of new generation of Siebel developers, so it's a very good excuse for these things.
Yeah.
But again, there will be recording as usually. We'll put it on the YouTube. Files will be available. So kind of if you kind of register then and do not show up, you will get the recording. So it's a good reason to register for the sign up.
Great initiative from Ideaport here. Thanks, Juris. An update on devpops, the GitHub open source developer toolkit, which is officially strictly educational, so you use it at your own peril. I have been on and off it recently, teaching a lot, but managed to push out a 21.3, just following Oracle's lead here. And this now includes a user guide. So you have at least some documentation there. There's also a developer guide in the making, so you get some background info as to which JavaScript function is for what. So here's the user guide. You can download it. So it tells you in an easy way what are the features that are delivered with the current version, like the famous fast inspect for workspaces, the application menu that is now, as you can see, this is now customizable and floatable, dockable, whatever you call it. So maybe give it a try. Oops, got a timeout here, but let me log in again. So yeah, the menu now has a kind of toolbar in itself. First link is to the user guide. Second one is rotate, which brings it into this floating toolbar shape, where you can which stays on top, so you can then click your favorite buttons and, for example, get the X-ray working or reset it. So it's much more toolbar style now, and personally my favorite. So I'm using this one all the time. The icons I just randomly picked from the Siebel images folder. So you might want to change that. So I included a JavaScript function which you can override. Literally, you can put in your own menu items now. You can put in your own icons. Yeah, so that menu is now customizable, and it is also configurable. So there's an edit button, and you can turn on or off settings that you don't want to see very often. Like, okay, let's remove here these two, save it. Now they're not visible. You go edit again, you can enable them. It's just straightforward. And there's also a undock button. So now you can, well, leave it as a side menu maybe, and it stays there. So allowing you to, well, do the stuff. So that is a cosmetic change. Hope you like it. It's in the latest version.
Alex, on GitHub there, you don't specify a license of any kind?
Yeah, I need to add one really, but it's the Black Sheep license, so but I will put it under MIT or whatever free licensing there is. Yeah,
I think MIT is exactly, for that. Like, do not. I mean, you can use it everywhere you want to, but it's on your risk.
Yeah,
it's like Oracle slides. It's kind of, they are on the MIT license as well. So.
I use MIT most of the time because like use it if you know what you're doing at your own risk. I keep this reminder up all the time. It's educational code, so you want to see how things are done in OpenUI as an OpenUI developer. But of course, it's like a mix of things that we have here. Also, another feature that is included 21.3 is the business service runner, which I always wanted to have. So we all love the business service simulator, and we love it to death. But there should be a faster way to run a business service. So now we have the service runner, and so it comes out as a pop-up, and you have type ahead. So you can, for example, do your EI Siebel adapter, pick a method like query page, gives you the properties. That's where business service simulator, well, is a bit modest. And let's enter the page size it's required. And for certain elements like integration objects, there's a drop down too. So let's find account interface. Let's pick internal account interface. And you hit the big run button. And it runs, pushing out the translated property set or the encoded property set. You can export it to eScript, which is just a code that runs in the background. So it literally generates eScript on the fly and runs it through Slava's utility, which is the eScript runner. So it uses an existing utility. So literally it's generating eScript and running it and getting the output. Has some features like if you create another one, you can use the last output as the input. You can copy that property set to your clipboard to mess with it. You can save it as presets. So you have presets here, for example, let's say the UPT process ready as a preset, run it. And the workflow runner, so if you select run workflow, it gives you your list of active workflows to run, like account new order. There's a row ID loader. So if you go to real account, like this one, click reload, loads the row ID, hit run. And this is an interactive flow. So it goes to the order view, but it works all right. So you can just go back. So I couldn't find a faster way to run a business service or workflow. So that is also included in the latest devpops for, well, it's open source, so you can see how it's done, how the code runs, how I'm querying the workflow processes. It's workspace aware, definitely. So that means if you have if you inspect the workspace where you have a new workflow, it shows up. So that works too. All right, so that was a little bit on devpops. Always something new there. I'm working on a few tweaks, so there would be a new version out by next week. I know Jason's waiting for that tool, the workspace display to be fixed, and that's fixed now. So you always in the
Oh, fantastic.
Okay, and you can double click to reload it, so that and it finds out when I'm working on this now, but it finds out when you modify the screen, which is the closest I got to finding out you had a new view. So when you modify the screen in your workspace, it reloads the caches. So maybe lucky I've created one here. Okay, so you see standing by for cache refresh, and then doing the cache refresh, and there's the view now in the view bar visible, which is just now in this developer workspace. Yeah. So it tries to be clever and refresh the cache only when it needs to. So this one doesn't have a view or a screen update, so it's not doing a refresh. But that's work in progress. So I'm showing something that's not yet available. Anything we're missing out? Anything important?
I would say it's interesting to DB SSO option for me, because we are emulating SSO in a low environment. So we have custom adapter for it. But this is kind of out of the box.
The DB SSO.
Right. So when you need to run services against with a trust token, and you need to impersonate and don't have LDAP and whatever is available.
Yes. I enabled it on a sample database. You know, the Siebel sample database. It has those like 100 users. You know, Casey Cheng and all those users. And to be able to log in as these users, you would have to create a database account. So I tried it. Actually, enabled database SSO, not in 21.3 now yet. And the funny thing is, I still got a login page, but I could just enter the username, no password, which was a bit scary. And then it let me in because it used the default user I entered for authenticating.
So basically, you should ask for trust tokens, I understand.
Yeah, another behavior was when you enable it actually for the gateway security profile in the SMC, you can enable it too. You can enable database authentication with SSO. Then the trust token you enter actually becomes the password. So it's an observation I made, and it fascinated me. So the trust, I'm not sure if this is on purpose, and now I have to test 21.3 again if it's fixed, because I thought it was a little bit unclear, even insecure, if you have a login page where you never have to type in a password and you get in. So what if you type admin? So that's I think also why there is a recommendation not to put it in production. Okay, so it seems we had a great Siebel Friday. 1 hour on the spot. Thanks very much, Nick from Duke, for the presentation. Was very well laid out, especially the Java bits. I like that very much. Yeah, thanks, Juris, for the initiatives you constantly doing to make our lives better in the modern world and keep us on our toes. Yeah, thanks everybody who joined. So officially, I'll say thank you and close this Siebel Friday.
Catch you next time.
Thank you, guys, and have a great weekend.
Have a nice weekend. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.